But I do see Sugar Sean versus Gervonta Davis someday. I really do. I see it. I'm manifesting it, baby. I'm saying it. I've been speaking it into existence. It's going to happen someday. It's going to be a massive fight.
And back to your comments on Gervonta Davis. Boxing, we're talking about your
Of
serious.
course.
You wanna cross over and box him.
I would love to. He's fucking this tall, dude. I would love to go out there and box him.
What if Sean O'Malley boxed Gervonta Tank Davis? And I feel like this is a fight we're never going to see at this point because, for one, Gervonta Davis has talked about how after 2025, he is done with boxing. He's going to retire. And Sean O'Malley lost his bantamweight title, which means he lost his leverage in order to convince the UFC into making this super fight happen, because the only time that this fight has ever happened is when we had a champion in Conor McGregor who was a massive star, and he had a lot of leverage, and he was able to convince the UFC to let him go and box Floyd Mayweather. But let's say Sean O'Malley didn't lose his title to Merab Dvalishvili, he would have most likely fought Umar Nurmagomedov next. And then given that Ilia Topuria is most likely going to move up to the lightweight division, Sean O'Malley's next fight could have actually been Gervonta Tank Davis. But how would this fight have actually gone? And let's talk about Sean O'Malley's boxing skills and Gervonta's boxing skills, their strengths, their weaknesses, and how I think the fight would have played out. And let's talk about Gervonta first. And this guy is a lifelong boxer. He's one of the top pound-for-pound boxers out there. He's very skilled. He's got thunderous knockout power, but also he's got incredible fight IQ. He can fight like a pressure fighter like he did against Frank Martin, or he can be a dangerous counter-puncher on the back foot like he was against Ryan Garcia and Rolly Romero and Pitbull Cruz. And Gervonta was the prodigy of Floyd Mayweather at one point, and we know Floyd as the greatest defensive boxer of all time, and actually the greatest boxer in ring of all time. And you can tell that, he's learned a lot from Floyd. He's able to implement some of his defensive tactics. He's got great eyes, great defensive movement, great footwork, and he's able to make his opponents pay by making them miss first and then countering them with dangerous shots that sometimes put his opponents out cold. His counter-striking is maybe his best attribute, but he's got tons of, dangerous tactics to get his opponents out and put some serious damage on them. And Gervonta will be able to do the same thing against Sugar Sean O'Malley. But let's talk about some of Tank's weaknesses. And sometimes his jab can, potentially get him in trouble when he's fighting guys in the southpaw stance. Like Sean O'Malley is a switch hitter, so he'll fight from the orthodox stance and the southpaw stance. And Tank sometimes gets a bit lazy when retracting his jab, which leaves an opening for that southpaw left hand. And another potential weakness for Tank is when he's using the high guard. Sometimes when you throw a bunch of shots at him, he just kind of tanks it, essentially. He just tanks those punches, and sometimes those punches can get around the guard and potentially hurt you. And I feel like that's what happened a little bit against Ryan Garcia early in the fight. Ryan Garcia was putting that pressure, and he was throwing a lot of shots at Tank, and Tank was just kind of covering me up with his high guard, and some of those shots might have buzzed him a little bit. But another strength of Tank Davis is his ability to remain calm in situations like this. He's able to find big counter punches in the fire, and that's what makes him so dangerous, because he can put you out if you get too reckless. Now, let's talk about Sean O'Malley. And Sean O'Malley, first of all, his main form of defense, because it's mixed martial arts and there's the smaller gloves, he uses distance and footwork as his defense. He doesn't really use traditional boxing defensive moves. He does often parry shots, but he won't really put up a high guard. He's not gonna move his head a whole lot, because in MMA you can get kicked in the face and you don't want to lean into a kick or whatever. But head movement can actually work in MMA, but Sean O'Malley, he doesn't really utilize it. He usually just has a speed advantage over most of his opponents, and he's able to just kind of backpedal away from danger and then get back to the center of the ring, because in MMA, fighters usually fight at kickboxing distance, where there's a lot more space between them, and in boxing you're a lot closer to your opponent. It's like punching range. And in boxing, you move a little bit and then you're backed up against a rope, so you want to focus more on traditional defense, like taking shots on the guard moving your head or like just deflecting shots away from your face. And Sean O'Malley typically likes to fight with his hands a bit lower. Like, he won't have his hands guarding his face, but sometimes when he is under fire, he will bring his hands back up to his face to defend himself from his opponent's attacks. Ultimately, distance is Sean O'Malley's best friend when it comes to defense. But let's talk about his offense. Sean O'Malley has good power in both hands. He's pretty fast too, and he can fight from both stances really well. And I think that could be his best attribute, but also his undoing in this fight. And we'll talk about how that can be his undoing really shortly. But firstly, it's very effective because Gervonta is a type of guy that likes to take a few rounds to see what his opponent is doing to eventually come up with a strategy to get his opponents out of there. So usually he'll lose maybe the first 2 rounds, maybe the first 3 rounds against his opponents. And then, like, once the fight gets going, he starts like landing more and more shots. He starts being more aggressive and letting his hands go a lot more. So early on, when Sean O'Malley's fresh, I can see him having a lot of success, maybe potentially tagging up Gervonta Tank Davis. He's got a very, very good and fast one too. He's also able to control the distance between him and his opponent very well. He's able to hit them and then make sure he stays safe. He's also got the height and reach advantage, which is going to help him even more against Gervonta Tank Davis. Sean O'Malley also uses a lot of feints to set up his strikes, which is going to help him a lot to mask his attack and not get counterpunched by a vicious counter-striker like Gervonta Davis. Sean O'Malley also uses quite a bit of shifting combinations where he'll throw punches from one stance into the other, which creates an angle for you to strike your opponent where they might not be expecting it and catch them off guard, which you don't really see much in boxing. You just see guys just throwing combinations from one stance, and then they're always like balanced, right? They don't leave themselves out of position, which can happen when you are throwing shifting combinations like Sean O'Malley. With that being said, let's get into how I think the fight would go down. And, Sean O'Malley, I think that early on he will have a bit of success with Gervonta Davis. I think he will be changing stances, hitting Gervonta with shots like he's not really seeing coming because of the constant angle changes. But I think that within 2 or 3 rounds, Gervonta is going to have that figured out. And I think that he is going to start playing possum a little bit with Sean O'Malley and sort of get him comfortable with chasing and reaching for shots. And Sean O'Malley does do that in the UFC already. And I think that Gervonta Davis isn't going to be throwing a lot of punches. He's going to be just guarding shots and moving away from Sean O'Malley and making Sean O'Malley even more comfortable and making him open up a lot more and have him forget about his defense by not doing too much, by just defending. And Gervonta does this a lot against his opponents. He just gets them to get comfortable in there, throw a lot of shots as he's just measuring, taking his time and getting his counter punches ready. And then in about like the 4th round or so, I think that Gervonta will have some of Sean O'Malley's moves down, like his shifting combinations, and I think that he's going to clip him with a heavy counter punch. And Gervonta has seen something similar to this in the past when he fought Frank Martin. Frank Martin would throw like his left hand and then he'll like kind of bring his back like forward as if he's going to throw a follow-up shot from the orthodox stance, but Gervonta catches him with an uppercut, and I think he could do something similar to Sean O'Malley, whether it be an uppercut or just a left hook or a left straight. And I think that as the fight goes on and as Sean O'Malley starts getting tired and he starts getting hit by Tank, he's going to be making more and more mistakes. And I think that Gervonta Davis is going to be able to counterpunch him even more. And I believe that in round 5, Gervonta is going to be pressuring O'Malley heavily. He's going to be throwing a lot of combinations, getting him trapped in the corner. And I think that's where he's going to finish Sean O'Malley, because I don't think Sean O'Malley's defense is really up to that level to where he can survive off the corner from Gervonta Davis. And Gervonta has some dangerous knockout power. This guy hits harder than some heavyweights. And I just don't see Sean O'Malley taking some of these massive shots for any more than 5 rounds. I feel like Gervonta would get him out of there inside 5 rounds. And overall, to beat Gervonta Davis, I think Sean O'Malley has no chance in hell.